Hello and thank you for joining in on today's training. Heart & Solutions is a proud provider of CE-eligible trainings for our counseling community. This training may be eligible for continuing education credit hours through either the National Board for Certified Counselors, provider number 7376, or the Association of Play Therapy, provider number 21-645. To obtain CE hours for today's training, be sure to follow the steps in the description below to find and take your quiz.
Good morning. I am going to present the EGALA method of equine-assisted therapy, and I will also mention some other methods as well. This is using horses to help people. Horses can help in play therapy settings as well, so I figured that this would be appropriate to share because you are getting play therapy CEUs for this presentation. I am EGALA certified. I have had part 1 training. Now they have changed the trainings a little bit. They offer part 1 and part 2 as a combined training. They usually hold that different locations around the country, around the world, will host these trainings. They're very extensive trainings that are held at a property where someone has the facility, the horses, and then they will, they'll host like a 5-day training and you will go pretty much all day. You'll get lunch. And it's really a great experience. You get to work with the horses hands-on and get to know other people who are also interested in equine-assisted therapy. And the benefits of equine-assisted therapy are numerous. There's been so many new facilities opening up all over. And I just had one little quote on this slide. I just, for what I know about horses, I know not everybody knows everything about horses, but just knowing, the typical horse, there's like, you think about little girls or little boys looking at, playing with little horse models and getting all excited about, horses running and things like that. As a child, you think, wow, the horse is a really beautiful animal. And they are very, very beautiful. They're very powerful and they are very intuitive creatures. They're very reflective and they are super curious about the world around them. They're herd animals, so they are very, they need social interaction just as humans do. And they have a hierarchy in their herd. They have a pecking order. They will establish this in different ways through their body language and their noises that they make. And they also are prey animals. So they will react. They're very aware of their surroundings. They just sense everything that's around them. They can even sense a human heartbeat from about 4 feet away. So it's pretty remarkable. So equine facilitated psychotherapy is what EGALA is. Basically, it's EFP, also referred to as equine assisted psychotherapy. It's a therapeutic method, features client interactions with horses. It's unlike the therapeutic horseback riding, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but where there is a place in Iowa that will use horseback riding as a mode of therapy. It's called, that mode is actually called PATH. I'm not sure what the letters stand for offhand, but it's a different mode of therapy where it's actually having the client up on the horse. They're working with balance and they have usually volunteers on either side of the horse walking along with the horse. But EGALA is not that type. EGALA, all interactions with the horse are conducted on the ground in an enclosed arena space. So the horse is part of a therapeutic team working with a mental health professional and a certified equine specialist. So in order for an EGALA session to take place, all 3 of those have to be in place. So the horse has to be there, the mental health specialist or the mental health professional has to be there, and the certified equine specialist has to be there, as well as the client, in order for that session to take place. So this is a 26-minute video of me working with my own horse. And I apologize in advance. The video is just limited, but this is the arena space that my horse is in, and she is just at free will. She is just walking around, and this is exactly what happens in the EGALA session. Usually it's probably like, I mean, sometimes it can be one horse, but it could also be two horses that are involved in the session. And they are just allowed to walk where they would like, just to explore, to be curious. Horses are very curious creatures. And so it's really interesting. You'll see parts of this video where, you know, Ella, my horse, is not really seemingly interested, but then at some points you'll notice that she becomes very curious. And so it's really interesting. So part of that, and I'll go over this after the video, and I might just, you know, I don't know if there's going to be really boring parts in this. I did watch it prior to setting this all up. But again, she's off camera sometimes, but you'll see her kind of interact a little bit. So this process, the more curious you are about what's going on, that's what this is all about. The curiosity is a main piece of this whole process. So I will go ahead and play this video.
Hold on, before you play it, I have a question.
Okay, yes.
So is this you doing a session of EGALA, or is this you just demonstrating like what the techniques are, but there's no client?
There's no client, no client. I am just demonstrating the techniques, and as if there would be a client, I'm kind of doing what the client would do, because they get like basically an assignment to do with the horse. And so you just kind of observe what's going on, and the mental health therapist and the equine specialist kind of stay off to, you know, watch what's going on. And the client is the one that's interacting with the horse. So it's pretty amazing.
So in this, you're in the role of the client. You're interacting with the horse like we would hope a client would.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
And I'm kind of describing what would happen. And, you know, again, she's not really on the camera sometimes. So it just depends on where like, I'm not sure how much of that I got. But she does come up to the camera, which is quite funny. So, cause I mean, she's just, you know, on her own, she does whatever she wants. So, so it's kind of cool.
I am using this EGALA training manual that I received when I had my first training in EGALA. And so I will just kind of quote a few things here from the book. I will list this resource in another slide. But I figured it would just be easier to do hands-on, just to see what Ella is willing to do right now. As you can see, she's way out there. She's probably thinking about wanting to be with her friends. And Ella is an Arabian. She is purebred. She is 31 years old. I have had her for 10 years. And I recently just felt a real passion to do equine assisted therapy through the EGALA method. There are many different methods of equine therapy, which I will also list in this presentation. But the one that EGALA is part of is the equine assisted psychotherapy, or equine assisted learning. So EAP or EAL. Basically, the difference between like different kinds of psychotherapy, EGALA uses experiential modality, and it's really basically the horses are on the ground, so there is no riding involved. So some equine therapy programs will have the client up on the horse, but in EGALA, it is all done with the horse at free will, like Ella is right here. She is basically free to go wherever she would like. And the client and then an equine specialist called an ES will be in the arena with the client, and the horse is part of the team. So it will be the mental health therapist, the equine specialist, and the client, and then the horse. Or it can be multiple horses. Usually it does work, and not necessarily better, if there are more than one horse involved. Ella is fairly new to this, so I know she's helped me, but I'm going to see if she will respond to some of the things that I'm going to do with her. So basically what, I'm just going to read this here. It's a solution-oriented method of therapy. So the characteristics of EGALA, there's a directive teaching, and then asking questions is a big part of it, and focusing on the process of what's happening. So the horse task set up for the clients is never the goal for the facilitators. So our focus as a facilitator in this process is actually the process itself. The growth and learning occurs through the journey. So if facilitators become focused on the clients completing the task that they're assigned to do with the horse, then there's problems with that. Basically, then the facilitator is going to be trying to rescue the client in some way or working harder than the client. So facilitators have to let go of the control by trusting that process. So the failures, frustrations, discouragements, and successes between the horse and the client. There are many people who are afraid of horses. Horses are big animals. Ella is about 800 pounds, so she's little compared to some horses. But some people are very afraid of them. And so you'll get clients that come in to a session and they've got a lot of fear going into it because they don't know what the horse is going to do. Horses are very, they're herd animals, so they want connection. So that is why they're very good at working with clients in the therapy process. We're looking for long-term solutions, not short-term feel-good fixes with EGALA. Instructing or rescuing may make the client feel good. Basically, trying to come up with the solution before the client does. But it's not part of that process with EGALA. So with EGALA, there is a strict code of ethics that they use. And it's a very strict code of ethics. I mean, we have this listed and I can put a reference for that as well. The horse is part of the team, as I mentioned. So the horse is a professional. They have to be willing to do the work. Obviously, Ella doesn't seem to be willing to do the work today. So I just wanted to see what she would do if I were standing here in front of the camera, if she were gonna come over and check it out. I was going to set up some cones, so I think I'll do that right now and see if she contributes to that process. So I'm gonna put this down and I'm going to see. As you can see, Ella's very curious as far as what I'm doing. She wants to see what's happening. So part of the therapy process with the client is the mental health professional and the equine specialist will come up with tasks for the client, basically an assignment for the client to do. They use a lot of cones like this, and then also pool noodles, those foam pool noodles. And basically what you're instructing the client to do is to come up with, to set up like an environment or like a situation, like a scenario based on what they're feeling, what they're going through, and then trying to get the horse to move into their area without touching the horse. So basically the client is going up to the horse and trying to move the horse over to the section where they want the horse to go. So I'm gonna try that and see if Ella's willing to be a team member. So I will try to move her.
Unfortunately, you can't see this part. But she doesn't move. There's
But
a
you're
cat.
you're not touching her at all.
I'm not touching her, but the cat is very curious.
Can you describe like what you're doing to try
So
and get
what
her
I'm
to
doing,
like,
what I'm doing is I'm standing next to her and I'm just putting my hands like up, like both my hands up, and I'm not really using any words. You're not really supposed to like, make clicking noises at them or any, they're supposed to just do a lot of this with nonverbals, like just to try to, the horse is supposed to, just basically figure out what they need to be doing. And so if the client goes into it with any kind of agenda, the horse will pick up on that. And so that's where some of that real deep stuff comes out. So basically this is to get the client to try to, quote, move this big horse without touching them is a pretty amazing thing. And so the client will be like, well, I can't do that. And it's very, can become, she's so, how my hands are like that is what I'm basically doing.
And I'm just basically gesturing with my hands, trying to get her to respond. But it's obvious she is not participating right now. That is also part of the process. So what we can do from what she is doing right now is the client can basically find out what's going on. Maybe there's something inside of me that is stuck, and Ella is reflecting that. She just put her tongue out. Did you see? So she's putting her tongue out. That means she is feeling some kind of release. So she is now able to move. She obviously felt a little stuck right there. Now she's going where she wants to go. So this happens in the session. It doesn't always, work the way the client wants it to. So they'll get frustrated with that at times. And there's part of the process with that as well, because then it opens that up for the client to figure out what it is inside that's going on. So possibly, personally, maybe I could have some resistance going on inside, and Ella is feeling that resistance. So I'm gonna try it again. I'm gonna take 3 deep breaths and try it again, and just see if she responds any differently.
So that's also, you can incorporate breath work with that process. And it's amazing how the horse, they sense right away when you're more relaxed. Unfortunately, Ella was being very lazy though, so she didn't do anything else, but it's just interesting. It's a very interesting process, because you might think, as the therapist, you might think nothing is happening, but there's so much happening. It's incredible. Like, it's just like, it's like the silent stuff. It's so cool.
Later, do you go over like what kind of prep work needs to happen with the clients before they go into this? Like, I'm imagining you don't want to bring a crazy client into this that's running back and forth, because that might startle the horse.
Yeah, they could. And, and that's actually, I'm going to actually find out more about that when I work with kiddos doing the equine work, because I haven't really seen that where you have like a child with high energy and what the horse does with that. I would think that that would actually be a pretty amazing part of the process, just to see how the horse would react to that. Because again, they sense that energy. And if it's like, it's a healthy, good, like just hyperactive energy, the horse is going to be just fine with, but if it's a different kind of energy that, the horse will mirror anything and everything. I do go into a little bit of detail, like what you need to, to prepare. I didn't give, I have the reference for the manual. I don't know if that's accessible online, but they do have the website that has a lot of the info about the prep work.
She's just looking at me like crazy. Anyway, but that is part of the process. And now she's willing, see? So I kind of set her up a little bit, maybe. She's a little curious. But again, this is part of the process. So what the mental health provider will do is they will check it out with the client. Like, what do you notice? Or just say, I noticed that you walked toward the horse and the horse stood still. Just basically just letting them kind of interpret what's happening, because basically the client is doing a lot of the interpretation work is done by the client and not the facilitator. So there's a lot to this. And it does take some practice. There are key words that we use. Let me grab the manual again. What we do with Igala
He's watching
is
you.
we use...
Yeah, this is when she gets really curious, and it's quite funny.
Let me just find that page.
I can't find my place in the book.
And spuds are basically, they're things that happen in the session. Let me see.
I'll help you.
Talk about spuds. Okay, so the spuds, she's going to be curious now. We'll see if we can find it here. Okay, let's see, Ella, maybe you can help me. and help me, Ms. Spuds?
Do you think that she's like, is part of this like she's reading your anxiety and so she's like coming to be helpful in like a social way?
Yes,
Or is that really much?
I believe that is true. I think she definitely sensed that I was a little unsure at that point, and she really she focused in on that energy.
So here are the Spuds. Well, S, okay, well, I guess the last S of the Spuds, I don't know why I'm not finding this here. Okay, here we go, sorry. So SPUDS stands for shifts. So you watch for shifts in behaviors. Now, Ella is moving, and you can't see her because she's off camera right now, but she is moving kind of around the perimeter of the arena. So you watch for shifts in behavior of both horses and humans. Okay, so for instance, the horse was standing, now she's walking away. First, the client may not be able to get near the horse. Maybe the horse walked away from the client. Maybe the client was feeling something inside that the horse walked away from, because horses will reflect what you're feeling. So if you're feeling a lot of tension, a lot of anger, that kind of thing, they're going to move away from that. So you're really wanting to pay attention to those shifts. So that's the first S in the word SPUDS. So it's also important not to express judgment on whether that shift is good or bad. There is no good or bad shift. You're just watching for the shift. If it occurs, it occurs, and then you note that. And then the P stands for patterns. So if the behavior occurs 3 or more times, then it's a pattern. So it might be the horse is running circles, maybe they're running. Now Ella's just standing there. It might be the client and the horse stepping on a rope. It might be a certain spot in the arena that client and the horses go, or it might be an interaction between the horses or the client and the horse that continue to occur. So that's a pattern. So you watch for those patterns. 3 or more times constitutes the pattern. U stands for unique. That's for the moments when you think during a session, wow, I've never seen anything quite like that before. So as you observe the session, make sure that you write down. If you see the horse doing something out of the ordinary, like kicking up something, or anything else that's dramatic. Now, right now, Ella's not doing anything unique. She might just stand behind or stand against the wall and kind of scratch herself, because sometimes she gets a need to scratch herself. But unique moments are things that are different, that you notice in the session that are really unique. Unique moments have meaning. They tend to have meaning for clients. They can conjure up metaphors. The client can see the horse moving toward them and say, that reminds me of so-and-so in my life who walks toward me, but then they walk away, or something like that. Those kind of unique moments. The D stands for discrepancy. It's when we pay attention to clients' verbal communication against the backdrop of the nonverbal messages. So for instance, client says she's having fun, but hasn't really smiled. So there's a discrepancy between what she's saying and what is actually happening, or like what you can observe. Maybe the client's saying they don't want to do this, but they walk toward the horse. Maybe the client says, I hate my parents, but you notice them stopping the parents from doing something unsafe during the session, if the parents are involved, which can happen as well. A family session can take place as well. So observing those moments, very important, indicate the opportunity for change. Humans have a desire for congruency, and horses don't engage in incongruent behavior. So they help the client to work towards congruence or congruency. So that's when the change comes, which is pretty exciting to see that happen. When a horse does, and I don't know if you can see that when she's licking, again, I mentioned that was a type of release. She's feeling something. They're not going to be verbal, because obviously the horse can't talk to you, not like Mr. Ed, but they will communicate with you by what they show you, and they are just incredible mirrors of what we feel. And then the final S for SPUDS is apostrophe S. So it's SPUD apostrophe S. So apostrophe S is the self-awareness, or my stuff. Observing clients and horses, we're tracking our own countertransference as we do in any session in the office, right? So we have to know what's going on because we can transfer something to the session. Just like I said, maybe I'm feeling some tension right now. Maybe Ella's picking up on that. Right now, she seems very relaxed and she's listening to me and she is watching and she's licking and chewing. So that's what I recognize. Her ears are pricked forward. She's very attentive right now. So how does the apostrophe S influence our planning, observations, and processing? So when we choose to move toward or away from the clients or horses, what is motivating that? What's behind that? So sometimes we find ourselves focusing on one aspect of the process. So we need to be very aware of ourselves and what's going on. We all have these apostrophe S's. Awareness of our apostrophe S allows us to turn it into a helpful tool for growth and learning for clients and ourselves. So we always have to be aware. So in summary, observing without interpretation. We're watching through the framework of SPUDS, and we have to be specific, objective, and seeing it through an unclouded lens. So when we see what's happening in the arena, we have to be totally unclouded. I just think it's really here. I'm gonna see if you can see her on the camera. Let's see, yep, she's right there. So she is very, very aware. So we're actually, what we are doing in this process is we are really engaging with not only the horse, but also with the client and the process, what's going on. And we also, in EGALA, will use clean language. And that, by clean language, that means, so if somebody would interpret a behavior that either the horse or the client did, say the interpretive language would be, oh, the horses responded aggressively. Say there's two horses and one of them nipped at the other. And you would say, oh, the horse responded aggressively. A clean language would be, the horses put their ears back and moved their hind end. Because we're observing what's happening. So if you look at Ella right now, what would you observe about her? She's got her ears pricked forward. She is looking towards me, right? She's very curious about what's going on. She is trying to engage with this process. She's trying to figure out what's going on. She is being observant. And so I will notice that with the client. Say the client is really resistant at first, like Ella was, right? She is now feeling that motion, that energy, that something could happen here, right? I don't have a client in here, but if I did, she might be ready to work with this client. But we allow the horse to kind of figure that out as well. We allow the clients to figure out where they're at. So we approach the session with humility. That's a very important piece to this. We're admitting we're not that smart as we might think we are. You know, we're learning all of the time. We're constantly learning. We're developing a sincere belief in the capabilities of both client and horse. We're asking ourselves, am I asking a question that I feel I know the answer to? We are developing a curiosity. Just like Ella was experiencing that curiosity, we have to be open to that curiosity piece as well, about what our clients are going to believe and think. So observation, it does take practice, especially when people are not familiar with horses, because horses do, you know, sometimes we observe them out in the pasture, we'll observe them eating, but a lot of people are just not that close to a horse in an arena setting. So that's how the observation goes. So it really does take practice. And Ella is fairly new to this, but she has, like I said, she's helped me in many ways. She is just a very, very good friend. I'm gonna see if maybe I can move her into these cones right here. So this is the section I'm gonna try to move her. She's getting more curious and I'm gonna go see if I can do that. obviously not taking my lead to go that way. So sometimes with the client, they could think of a different approach. Right now she's falling asleep, so I don't know if she's ready to do
Nap time.
And as you notice, I'm not really saying anything to Ella because she is trained to listen to commands. So if I tell her back up, she's gonna back up, back up, back up. Well, maybe she won't do it now that she's on camera. She's very sleepy today. Back up, 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 back up. Well, she's not being as cooperative, but again, these are the process. This is the process. This is what someone could get very discouraged about, right? So the client could be trying to get this big animal to move without the assistance of ropes and without touching them. So it's again, it's up to what Ella's feeling, how she is, and sometimes it could be totally different. So again, the process is always different, and it's always good to observe all of those things. So that's pretty much how the EGALA process works. As I said before, to sum it up, it would be a mental health therapist, an equine specialist, and then the client or clients. It could be a family. Equine therapy works with couples. And then again, it can be a team of horses. Usually it's a team of horses that the clients are trying to, or the client, one or more clients, are trying to get those horses to move where they need them. They'll be assigned a task, and that task will be, processed in the way that it needs to be. And then, of course, the observing is a very important part to that. And just watching the curiosity with both the client and the horse is very, very important. So I appreciate your time here watching this. I hope that this, made more sense to you. Again, I will include the reference in a different slide, and then continue the presentation. Thanks.
Okay, so that was basically a little bit about how that whole process works. There's quite a bit to it, but it is a team approach. So one of the things I mentioned was the curiosity. It's very important. That's like the most important quality of the facilitator in the process is curiosity. Being curious about what the client's thinking, be curious about what the horses are doing, what it might mean to the client, be curious about what the client and the horses might do next, be curious about what your team member is doing. There's a lot of that curiosity in each session because there's a lot that can happen, and just to be curious and open to what that might be. The role of the horse in the EGALA session is basically that, just to be a participant, to be a team member. They have to be present. The EGALA session cannot take place without the horse present. Can't take place without the mental health therapist or specialist present, or the equine specialist. The clean language, again, I mentioned in the video that you need to be mindful to keep your own opinions or advice to yourself, listening and observing attentively, exploring metaphors that are brought out by the client and in the client's language. So the interpretive language is kind of that language that we tend to be drawn to, right? We want to interpret what's going on. We want to make that, that decision like, okay, now I think I know what's going on. So an interpretive language example is, stating something like, okay, we noticed the horse was pushing you backwards. But an example of clean language in that same kind of context would be something like this. We noticed you were walking backwards and the horse had his nose touching your chest and was walking forwards. So that way it's kind of putting it to the client to kind of use that. It's a cleaner way, right? It's a cleaner way of saying that same thing. But you're not putting anything into it. You're observing, you're being very observant, you're noticing, we noticed this, and then allow the client to kind of interpret, like, what does that mean to you? Instead of, the facilitator being the interpreter. That is something that you just have to be really aware of, be mindful of, to be cautious that you're not, interpreting that process for the client. So that's what clean language means. The standards of EAGALA, there are these 4 model standards. It's the team approach. Focus is on the ground, taking place on the ground. It's very solution oriented. And there is a very strong code of ethics with the EAGALA method. The EAGALA model, very, very strong code of ethics. EAGALA has been around for quite a while. I don't know exactly. I have to look and see how long it's been around, but it is a worldwide program. I think it was founded, I'm just trying to see when the model was founded, but if I get that information, I will pass that along, because it's a really, it's a very, it's a very strong program, and it's the model that I would love to be. Actually, I will be working with the EAGALA model very soon. I will be working part-time at a clinic in Cedarburg, Wisconsin, that uses the EAGALA model. So the EAGALA is a collaborative approach. The EAGALA model incorporates the licensed mental health professional and a qualified equine specialist working together with horses and clients as equal partners in an experiential process that empowers life-changing outcomes. And that is from the EAGALA website. That's the reference there, www.egala.org. Very helpful website if you ever want to check that out. That is a very good resource. EAGALA is a revolutionary mental health treatment model incorporating horses who are highly attuned and offer a safe space for clients to discover their answers within themselves. So again, the client is discovering this. It's just kind of that next step. I mean, clients can work really well. Some clients actually don't do that well with talk therapy. Talk therapy can be very helpful, and there's definitely a need for that. But EAGALA is just that an extra level. It just offers that client that safe space, and it really is a powerful method. The high ethical standards, again, the code of ethics serves as the global standard to conduct business and guide practice for all members, providing for the well-being and safety of our clients and horses. So it's a very important thing. We want everyone to stay safe. So that being said, they have very high standards of how, safe, like the horses have to go through kind of a training as well, making sure that they are, an eager participant in the process. Some horses are not eager participants. Some horses, it just depends. But they do get screened for the therapy process. And so they are basically certified professionals in this process. So yeah, that's a very, very great way to kind of check out everything and make sure that the well-being and safety of the clients and horses is at the forefront of this process. Overcoming challenges in EAGALA teamwork. Everyone has the innate ability to solve their own problems. The role of the EAGALA team is to provide guidance that assists the client's own process and creates lasting solutions. And that is also from the EAGALA website. So now a little bit about equine partnered play therapy, which I think is also a very great, again, being that this is a play therapy CEUs, play therapy is an excellent, it's just great. Play therapy they, have this equine partnered play therapy, and they tend to use like the miniature horses or ponies for the children. That's a little one there. And they will set up like art projects, things like that, and have the horse basically in the arena or area where the child is doing that. And the horse will kind of just add that, contribute to that process, and really helps children and adolescents build social skills, increase their emotional awareness and regulation as well, and learn problem solving skills. It can also improve impulse control, it can instill confidence, and it really has been effective in helping teens to learn how to manage stress in really healthy ways. Um, it's been really helpful, like for teens who are going through, a lot of self-esteem issues, and just even, horses can be used in rehab facilities. I actually had a one-day training at like a place for young women who are addicted to drugs and alcohol, and they come to this farm, this place, and they use the horses to help them with their addiction issues. And I had an opportunity to work with the horses there at that place. It was amazing. I got to observe this one mare, and just really powerful, even with that hands-off process. And so just basically, I had written down, I found my notes from that observation, and there are a lot of really great observations that can be made with that, and so it can really be helpful with just all of those things. It's just a very, very helpful thing. And this is the greatest thing. So horses are actually very influential. They can help with sand tray therapy. Sand tray therapy has just been an amazing, method to use with clients, especially, children, but also adults. Sand tray therapy has just been proven to be very powerful, very effective. And there is a place, Tula Vida, and it is in Costa Rica. They offer training, so maybe I'll have to go there someday. But anyway, they have equine facilitated sand play. And this is remarkable. I was doing a little more research on this because I had no idea that horses actually support both the process and engage with the figures in the process of that sand tray therapy. It's fascinating. If you want to check out that website, they've got a lot of great articles on there. They've got some great, just some testimonials, just phenomenal work that these horses do with the sand tray therapy, and it's pretty remarkable. So that is something that you can check out. I highly encourage that. And so the benefits of equine therapy. This is basically it in a nutshell right here. I figured that this is a great way to just demonstrate that, just to get everything out in this chart. I think this chart is a very good way to just helping to build emotional awareness, to build social skills, impulse control, to help build confidence. You've got trust and empathy and problem solving skills. Horses can really help all of those things. There was a question brought up earlier about, if it's effective, if equine therapy can be effective with children who have, impulse control issues. So say a client, runs into an arena and is very, emotionally dysregulated, just has a hard time or crying or, whatever. The horse will actually, I think, would do really well with that. They may kind of walk away for a little while, but they'll eventually kind of come back around. They'll show that client what is necessary, how to kind of regulate those emotions or those impulses, and it's a very effective thing. One story that I wanted to include on the slide, but I'll just tell you, because horses are also very effective with veterans. So they have a lot of programs with horses helping veterans. When veterans come back especially from combat, when they see the things that no one should ever have to see over there. And it's just so traumatizing for them. And they have severe, severe PTSD, and they just don't know how to really put that into words. Horses can be very effective with that. There was a story, and I'm not sure where it happened, but a place that did equine assisted therapy. This gentleman was a war veteran. He had severe PTSD. He was triggered by loud noises. He just could not regulate his emotions. And the talk therapy process was not as effective as it could have been. So the therapist that he was working with suggested equine assisted therapy. He decided to go ahead with it, but he still had some hesitation. He was not sure how this would work. He got into the arena with the horse. The horse was on the opposite end of the arena. He stayed on the one end. He kind of stayed away from the horse, thinking to himself, how could this possibly work? And then I guess there was a helicopter nearby, or I don't know if he was close to a military base, I'm not sure. But anyway, a military helicopter flew overhead on a training or something, and he dropped to his knees. He had a horrible panic attack. He could not regulate. He just dropped to his knees, and he couldn't breathe. He was having a horrible time. And the horse that was on the opposite end of the arena walks over to the man and laid down right next to the man. And the man reached out his hand to touch the horse. And so they just sat for a little while. Just the horse stayed laying down right next to the man, and basically was teaching the man how to breathe. As incredible as it sounds, but the horse was just breathing, just slowly breathing. And the man was able to regulate his breathing and then regulate his emotional response to that, and was able to get up. And the horse got up. And again, that process was something that the talk therapy could not provide for this man. This man had to kind of experience this with the horse, hands-on, that, this horse is a big animal, but this horse actually knew what this man needed and provided that at that moment for him. There's one more example that I'll share with you that happened. I did not observe this, but I've heard about this situation because this was something that was shared at a training that I was at an EGALA training. And it was the mental health therapist. Her husband was the equine specialist, and they were telling us at the training about this little boy who had gone into a session and was very resistant. He walked into the arena and he decided that the horse was not going to do anything for him. And so he basically turned around and was going to walk back to the gate. He said, "This is ridiculous. I don't want any part of this. It's not going to help." And he didn't see this happen, but the mental health therapist and the equine specialist, who are always observing, right? This is the process. They observed the horse just suddenly just laid down on its side. And horses don't usually lay on their side. They'll curl up. They don't lay down often. Usually they'll have other horses around them that kind of, because they're prey animals, so they always have other horses in the herd watching over them. But this horse laid flat on his side, just laid down. And the boy did not see that, but the mental health therapist and the equine specialist did. And they mentioned this to the boy. They said, "Turn around and look at the horse." And so the boy turned around and he looked at the horse, and he said, "What's wrong? What's wrong with the horse?" And then it took a little bit, but the boy was realizing, oh, he was giving up. And so the horse gave up. So as soon as the boy turned around and saw that, the boy walked toward the horse, and the horse got up. And the horse, basically was telling the boy, "It's okay, we're going to start again." So that, to me, was really powerful, just in that the horse shows exactly, that boy was done. He was giving up. So the horse said, "Okay, I'm done too. I'm going to lay down." And again, it doesn't happen very often that the horse will just lay flat on its side. But yeah, that occurred. So that was pretty incredible. So those are two very powerful stories that I know of. that have happened in, the equine therapy process. A very incredible process for sure. I found this article on verywellmind.com, and I just included a little bit of that, but it stated that even though a variety of animals can be used in the psychotherapeutic process, horses offer unique traits that have made them a top choice for animal-assisted therapy sessions. That being said, dogs can also be very therapeutic. They have been really good with like reading programs for kids, where you bring the dog and read to the dog. Dogs can help regulate emotions for kids. They can help, calm you down just by petting a dog. It's no, research shows that your heart rate slows and you do get kind of a stress release with petting your dog or your cat or, whatever animal. But horses are just unique in the way that they are herd animals and they are just super observant. And the reason they're observant is just because of their instinct. They're always, in the wild. They were always, on the go, always alert, always ready, watching for predators. And so they're very in tune with the world around them. So they pick up on just about everything. It is also shown, and I didn't include that here in the slides, but I will mention that there was a study done that involved pictures of people's faces. And so they would have photographs of a person's face, and they would show that to the horse. So they would have a photograph of a person's face that was angry, and the horse reacted. They turned their head or they backed up. Very reactive to that angry face. And then they showed a picture of a happy face, and the horse came forward, moved forward toward that picture of the happy face person. So they do recognize emotion even in our facial expressions. So it's pretty powerful. They just are very, very in tune with what is going on around them. And again, I mentioned earlier that horses can actually detect a human heartbeat from a distance. And I did look that up. It's about 4 feet away. It enables them to be very intuitive to human feelings and emotions. Horses really feel, so that's one of the reasons why if you ever watch a horse and a rider, if they're, really connecting and you feel like, wow, that horse and rider are like one unit. It's because the rider's heartbeat actually syncs up with the horse. And so they move together and the horse will kind of feel the motions that are being communicated, even through the hands of the rider and the legs and just all the slight muscle motion that's going on in the human's legs against the horse will indicate to the horse what the human wants them to do. And they're very connected that way. So that is also a pretty amazing thing. But again, with EGALA and this kind of therapy, it is not, the people are not up on the horse, but it's just all on the ground. But there are other methods of therapy, which I will mention here in just a bit. Horses reflect without judgment what a person is feeling. Sometimes before the person is aware of what that feeling really is. So you can be feeling, really anxious, or you could be feeling really tense. Just as an example in the video earlier in the presentation, when I was kind of fuddling around with the book, I couldn't find my place. And so Ella sensed that and she came over because she kind of picked up on that. She knew that, I was a little bit feeling something, that tension or that, just uncertainty. So she kind of moved in to assure me that everything would be okay. And that's what she has done for me over the years that I've had her. She's just been just a real steady, and just they'll just show you the feelings. They don't have an agenda. They don't have any, they have no reason to hide behind anything. So they will be very honest with you. And that's one of the reasons why they're just really good to work with. horses lend us the wings we lack. And that's a quote by Pam Brown. I just felt that that was a really good quote. And this can go, in so many ways. Just again, going back to the play therapy, children. You think of the innocence of children, and just, some of the children that we work with in the therapy realm that have gone through some really, really difficult things, or struggling with school, struggling with friends, struggling with just anything in their life, family, problems in family, home life. And when they get around those horses, they basically just get that extra boost. The horse will just, be. They're just there, and children can feel, very secure with that. They need that solid, just a secure, someone to really rely on without any judgment at all. Um, Horses have really been just great partners, and especially just in the play therapy realm. I'm learning more about that, just recognizing that kids just really, there's something about a horse that even when a child, and I've seen little kids like ages, 4 or 5, with a brush, and they'll brush the horse, and they just have no fear. They just go right up to the horse. And if, the horse is just very responsive to a little person, they're very gentle. They're very, just, they recognize that this is a little person. So they really are, they're just they just give us what we need when we need it. So even if, and again, as I said in the video, some people are very scared of horses, but they are, and horses, can seem to be, right? Because if you have a horse out in the wild, they're very free spirited. They, they're very, they run, and they run fast. And if they're afraid of something, they're going to run. So they can be unpredictable in that way, but they also have a need for that bond. And so I believe, and then there can be other situations in exception to this, but I believe horses don't intend to, ever hurt a human, unless they have been hurt and they're reacting to that hurt, which is just like humans. I really believe that humans don't intend to be hurtful, but when they're hurt, sometimes humans will react in ways that will hurt others. So I just think that was a great picture and a great quote. Horses are social animals that need companionship to thrive. In the wild, horses form social bonds with other horses, relying on each other for protection and companionship. And that is from this Trvst World, trvst.world. It's a website with a lot of different horse quotes and pictures, and that just shows you kind of that herd dynamic. They're all very alert in this picture, and there's some young ones. There's only one in every herd. There's only one stallion in the herd. Obviously, the stallion is the leader, and in the wild horse world, they will dominate that herd. And so if another stallion wants to take over that herd, they will fight for that herd, and sometimes fight to the death, which is quite a powerful thing. Okay, so now I'm going to talk a little bit about other methods of using horses to help humans. So number one was the therapeutic horseback riding, which I mentioned. There is a place in Swisher, Iowa that has this. It's called Miracles in Motion, and that is the PATH program. And that's, when the client is up on the horse. That's a really, it's an amazing way to work on balance, and just that self-confidence. I know many kids in my own personal life that have used the therapeutic horseback riding just in their own, just that growth process. Kids that had, just there were some physical things they were dealing with, and that helped them with balance. It also helps with, kiddos with, other mental health issues as well. One thing I didn't mention, horses are great with kids that have autism or are on the autism spectrum. They are amazing. There was a story, I don't remember exactly where I heard this, but there was a kiddo that had autism and was not verbal at all, did not speak, and they decided to, get this child involved with equine therapy, and the child opened up and began to talk to the horse. So that's just, one little example again of how powerful that therapy can be. So the therapeutic horseback riding, very, very good. Hippotherapy is the second one, and that's also just using the horses to, assist, um, kind of similar to the therapeutic horseback riding. I believe that you're on horseback for that, the hippotherapy process. And then number 3, equine assisted learning, which is similar to, basically what EGALA is. Equine assisted psychotherapy and equine assisted learning are really, really close. There is a slight difference, but I'd have to find out what that difference is. I think it's basically, it's very, very similar. Let me just see if I can't quote that. So equine assisted learning, basically, you want to address learning goals, like what can I learn from the process? They're addressing really basically, what is learned, versus the equine assisted psychotherapy, which EGALA is addressing treatment goals. So it's, basically really, really similar. It just differentiates between like the population being served, the goals and objectives of the services which have been agreed to, and the focus of facilitation based on the agreed upon goals. So, so EAP again is the EGALA method, and then the 5th method is equine assisted activities. And those are just other things that you can do with horses to help people. I guess play therapy would be in that, but I would kind of put that more of the equine assisted psychotherapy, the equine assisted or the equine partnered play therapy. It might be in the equine assisted activity. They just listed that as kind of a general. You could do other things with the horses to assist. All right, so therapeutic horseback riding. So now I'm just going to kind of list a little bit of detail of what these things are. So the therapeutic horseback riding, similar to what happens in Swisher, Iowa at Miracles in Motion, it's typically taught by a riding instructor or a horseman who teaches you how to control the horse while riding. So it's used as an exercise to improve coordination, balance, posture, muscle tone, confidence, and well-being. So the individual is typically taught how to work with the horse on the ground also. So that's part of that process. So actually the hippotherapy might be more of what the PATH method. So yes, okay. So I'm sorry, I misquoted. So hippotherapy is what Miracles in Motion is utilizing. That is it's similar to therapeutic horseback riding. So they're using that horseback riding piece, but then they're also incorporating the occupational therapist, the physiotherapist, or a speech and language therapist. So the horse is controlled by a handler and then led through several different gaits. So they, get the horse to move differently. So those movements of the horse is going to be the challenge for the rider, strengthening postural responses and, then again, strengthening the muscles of the rider. So that is from this www.honeylake.clinic. If you want to take a look at that reference, these are all from that source. So equine assisted learning. So again, the EAL, they're basically participants who are involved are developing a heightened level of self-awareness, which is important in order to reveal patterns of behavior and giving the client a chance to think about it in a new way. So the 3 main areas of concentration in EAL are education, professional development, and personal development. Participants gain self-confidence by learning how to work with such large and powerful creatures and learn how nonverbal communication might affect others in their lives. All right. So equine assisted psychotherapy. So this is what EGALA is. So basically EAP is the use of horses to treat psychological problems. It is not the same thing as therapeutic riding or hippotherapy. Some programs might incorporate riding and vaulting, but most do not. They just utilize the groundwork with horses, such as grooming, feeding, and ground exercises. Mental health professionals use horses to help the clients learn about themselves and discuss feelings, patterns, and behaviors. So the goal is to help in social, emotional, cognitive, and behavioral ways. So that's what EGALA is, basically fits into that category. So here are some quotes about horses. So a horse doesn't care how much you know until he knows how much you care. Put your hand on your horse and your heart in your hand. And that's by Pat Pirelli. Pat Pirelli has a method of training horses. It's the Pirelli method. If you look up Pirelli method of horsemanship, I think that's what it is. He really has a great method to really work with that bond between horse and human. And just really, he does a lot of great work. And then this quote is the essential joy of being with horses is that it brings us in contact with the rare elements of grace, beauty, spirit, and freedom. And that's by Sharon Rawls Lemon. So again, that joy that comes with being with a horse. I have to speak to that just a little bit. One of the things that I can speak of in my own personal life when I have anything that's going on or if I'm stressed in my life, if I go to spend time with Ella, my horse, I basically, it's pretty much, it disappears. I don't know how to describe that. It's just this joy. It is for me, that is truly, it just kind of, for the time being, those troubles don't bother me. It's just, I guess, I was always the little girl that loved horses, like many little girls do, and many little boys do as well. But I didn't grow out of it, so I was very horse crazy, and always wanted my own horse, and I finally got my own horse, and so I'm very thankful. I will have an opportunity to be working with equine assisted therapy very soon. Will be working at a place, like I said, in Wisconsin that does equine assisted therapy. So that will be really great. Just using those skills that I know, always learning. That's part of the process as well, right? Like just always being open to learn. Going into a session, even with talk therapy, that is one thing that is really important, that the client understands that this is a process, right? So for them, it's a process, but also for the therapist, it's a process, because every client is different, every experience is different. We don't know what our clients are going through exactly. We can't say we've walked in their shoes. We have to be open, giving them that space, that safe space to be. And the horse, in this equine process is also part of that team that allows the client to just be who they are, and just giving them that freedom to just express their emotions as they would. And sometimes they're afraid to do that in front of a person, but they're not in front of a horse because they know that the horse isn't going to look at them funny, or the horse isn't going to say, oh, everything will be okay, or things that they normally hear in their daily life, that the horse will not, be putting anything on them, won't be telling them things that don't apply to their life. So yeah, it's a very, very, very powerful process. So that is actually all I have. I know that wasn't quite the full 2 hours, but that is Ella and one of my daughters there. So I really appreciate you participating in this training. Be sure to fill out the quiz to ensure you receive your CEUs. And I hope that you enjoyed this training. I will definitely, if you have any questions, you can email me. I will be leaving the Heart and Solutions Agency in a few weeks, though. So, but I'm very happy that I was able to take the opportunity to present this information. And again, just it's a very, very up and coming type of therapy, and it is very powerful. Again, you can look up different research models on it, but the EGALA website is very helpful if you check that out. It'll list all the different trainings. If you're interested in a training, you can let me know. I can give you more information on that as well. So anyway, I appreciate your time today, and I hope you have a great day. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining in on today's training. We look forward to having you join us again. Heart and Solutions is proud to provide CE-eligible trainings for our counseling community. This training may be eligible for continuing education credit hours through either the National Board for Certified Counselors, provider number 7376, or the Association of Play Therapy, provider number 21-645. To obtain CE hours for today's training, be sure to follow the steps in the description below.